they reach a point where they feel, I have nothing to lose. You put them under so much hardship, they feel like they have nothing to lose anymore. And that is actually human in its highest power.
Well, my first guest today is a psychologist and psychoanalyst, well known for her very popular social media presence, including her Instagram channel, Insight with Tina Parsa. Tina Parsa has built a large following in Iran and around the world for her online therapy and perspectives. In light of recent events in Iran, Tina has been working actively to produce helpful content about the revolution. And right now, Tina Parsa joins me from Los Angeles, California today. Hello.
Hi, Jian. I was gonna say a psychologist for a long time, but more of a human rights activist right now. For the
Right.
past 2 months,
Yeah.
I haven't been in the world of psychology anymore.
Well, a human rights activist. I mean, to read your posts, that brings that psychological analysis to things. I mean, first of all, it's great to have you back on the program. I did notice that
Thank
you
you.
just posted about the first official executing of a protester simply for protesting in Iran, Mohsen Shakari. Um, tell me how you're processing that news today, Tina.
But I think with just like many other Iranians, it's been very difficult. I mean, you wake up every morning, especially us in the U.S. and Canada. Our days and nights are different. So you wake up in the morning and you quickly want to go into your phone and see what's going on, and seeing all this news. For me, even as a psychologist, with all the techniques and all the work I've done on myself, it's been very, very difficult to handle. So yeah, it was very sad, very difficult to process. And but I know why they're doing it, to produce fear, to produce more fear. And fear is what they have used for 43 years to control the people of Iran, to rule and to lead. And so they are just carrying on producing that fear. And it's sad that we have to be subject to that. And yeah, yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that I've been talking about is, so far on the show is that there's no pretense anymore. They're not giving any. I mean, it used to be even a couple of months ago. It was, well, Massa Amini had a heart condition, or this guy was, they were responding in the moment in self defense. That's why, or the kid got hit by a spray, a bullet that wasn't meant to hit him. This is now, if you protest, if you disagree with us, we will execute you. That
Exactly.
feels like a next level kind of move, and it really puts to, I guess, maybe puts to shame those folks who've been that news from 3 or 4 weeks ago, when they were saying no, 15,000 people will not be executed, and people who have propagated an idea that this is a regime that somehow you can deal with. That hopefully that ship has sailed at this point.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I think uh, they don't have diplomacy, obviously, and like different people are saying different things, but I think they are trying to, they have different approaches to two different groups of Iranians. So they have their followers whom they're trying to show, we're not that bad, and we are giving people their rights and blah blah blah, with all their propaganda on the Iranian media, not accepting that they were responsible for all these deaths, for Mahsa and all the others. And then they have these people that are against them, and they very brutally treat them, just to produce fear, as I said, just to produce fear, and just to make those people scared to take any more action. And that's what I want to talk about today, actually, how fear is used to control us. I think it's very important to acknowledge and realize this at this point. And I want to go into the psychological effect of fear on us. And yeah, I think it will
Well,
be
let's do that.
interesting.
Let's do that
Yeah,
because
yeah.
uh, I mean, what comes to mind is that um, you're absolutely right that the the tactic of this regime for 43 years has been to scare the shit out of the population enough to be able to rule with an iron fist.
Mm,
It's not particularly unique. It's a hallmark of totalitarian regimes and dictatorships, and it's certainly
exactly.
been this one. The conversation around this that's changed in the last 3 months is that seemingly those fear tactics haven't worked. The same stuff that they did in Aubon, even as recent as 3 years ago, hasn't worked. That the revolution continues. That the young girls and boys and women and men who keep going out in the streets still, those students keep having those demonstrations. Is the fear working this time?
Exactly. So that, yeah, that's what I actually want to go into. So it seems pretty simple. Like we all know if you scare someone of doing something, they probably won't do it. But I want to go a little bit deeper to understand that fear and then go into why is it that the people are fearless now and they have gone past that fear. So let me start. I just want to start with a little bit of like psychological facts about how fear works. So we all know, let's look at our biological reaction to fear. So when we are put in a situation where fear is produced, for example, imagine if a dangerous animal is chasing us, or if we are in an earthquake, right? So that's producing fear. What happens in our body is our body starts to inhibit or suppress all our body desires. So it suppresses our hunger, our sexual desire, our need to sleep, right? So all the body needs are suppressed, and all our energy is put towards survival. Or in other words, all our energy is put towards any action that is going to keep us safe, right? So our psychological reaction to fear is also the same. You produce fear, what's going to happen in a person is all their psychological desires are going to be suppressed. When you produce fear, people move into this defensive sort of state, and in this defensive state people just want to keep safe. They no longer value their desires. They no longer have higher sort of needs. They only want to satisfy their basic needs. So what the government has done during the past 43 years is to produce this fear. Why do you think every Friday at the Friday prayers, instead of talking about like love and unity and peace, all they promote is this fear: death to this, death to Israel, death to the U.S. And all of this is to remind people that there's
Right.
an enemy who wants war with you, who wants to take over your land and resources, who wants the country segregated. And you're reminded this every single Friday. You People may not realize this, but this has very, very deep unconscious effects. So having produced that fear, then what they convey is that the only way to accomplish safety is to conform to the dictatorship, to the regime. Um, Also, if you want to take another path and protest, you face another fear of execution. What we see right now, this execution is for them to produce more fear of execution, fear of being imprisoned, tortured, raped, and all of that. So again, to become safe, to survive, you need to conform again to the dictatorship.
Right.
So, so for many years, we have seen the society of Iran not having even the most basic things that people have, in, say, Western countries. For example, they work their whole life not being able to even buy a car for themselves. And for a lot of, say, Iranians that have immigrated overseas and have seen, the way we can live, and when they go back, it's a question for them, or even for foreigners, why did people stay quiet for so many years? And that's the answer. That is people in that defensive state. When you put people in fear, they move into their defensive state, they suppress their desires to a point they don't even feel those needs anymore. They don't even realize they have those needs anymore. They are happy with the basics. They are happy just to, feed their family, and that's it. They don't go beyond that, right? Another very common thing you see in our culture is distrust between people.
Yes.
Even at this time of the revolution, you say one thing a little bit wrong on your Instagram, you have 1,000 people starting to attack you or swear at you, or become very distrustful of you. And that's the result of having lived in so many years of fear. They are defensive. So the smallest thing they see it as danger, and they think they have to protect themselves from it. And this distrust and this sense of insecurity we have developed over so many years, what does it affect? It affects our alliance and our unity. What we need for this revolution to go through is unity,
So here's
is alliance.
the obvious sort of question. It's a beautiful preface to bring us up to this moment. The obvious question is, presuming that this revolution has been at the front lines, at least led by young people, young women and men who were born into this Islamic Republic, who haven't even lived in something other than this, although they do have the tool of the internet to see how people are living in the rest of the world. How is it that they have achieved this kind of post-fear state to
Exactly,
be able to be going
exactly.
out there when previous generations like you and me and others didn't have that same courage?
That's very interesting. So fear, when it at to some level, to some threshold, it makes us insecure. It makes us defensive. It makes us separated. It makes us distrustful of each other.
Hmm.
What happens is, if you put too much fear on people for a very long time, especially this very young generation who has uh, grown up with this fear, they reach a point where they feel, I have nothing to lose. You put them under so much hardship, they feel like they have nothing to lose anymore. And that is actually human in its highest power, in its most strength, where you feel like, because what you fear is fear of loss. You fear comes from you being scared of losing things. But when you feel like, in this life I'm living, uh, I don't really have meaningful things that I'm scared of losing. I don't really have values. I'm not really living the life I want to live. So um, I'm okay to lose everything. And that gives you power. That actually makes you empowered to fight back. And I think that is what's happening to the young generation. They're willing to give up everything for them to come out of the state.
That's it's a great analysis, and it's really helpful. How do we, Tina? How do we avoid the normalization of the level of um, brutality and atrocities that this regime is overseeing? I mean, this is, to a certain extent. I see this in all kinds of ways as an Iranian who grew up outside of Iran. When things will be a shock to me that will not be a shock to somebody who grew up inside Iran, where I'll sort of go,
Exactly.
you couldn't play your guitar, and they'll say, of course not. What do you mean? But in a moment like this, like my greatest fear, for example, today with the execution of Mohsen Shekari, is that the regime will begin to do this with such regularity that we lose the context of just how outrageous this is, just how insane this is, because the atrocities pile up so much that you just kind of write it off as, yeah, well, that's to which, to a certain extent, to which I think the West already does that, where it's like, well, that's Iran, we know these things happen, what are we going to, how are we going to be able to help that situation? How do we avoid that normalization?
Mm, 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 mm. Well, I think the Iranians abroad could play a huge role in this, as we have so far, by, posting things, by talking about this on your social media, by talking about how life could be outside of that, and that it is not okay. So what I've been doing on my own page is I've asked my followers to send, for example, stories in form of voices from like what they experience, the uh, suppression they experience, for example, in Islamic schools or in the society, or so these stories need to be told. And when they are told, when we hear them again, it's sort of what happens in therapy as well. When you hear what is happening again with awareness, then you realize, hey, this is not okay, you know? So I think it's, first of all, it's very important to acknowledge that it is not okay. It's very important to raise awareness about these stories, make these voices be heard by the international society and by, the Iranians abroad. And yeah, I think all we can do as Iranians abroad is to help those people realize that life could be different. But being in that country, even for myself, living there for like the past 10 years, um, that does happen to you because it just is part of normal life. So it does happen to you where you just get used to it. You don't see it
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah.
But I think things are changing because of social media, because of all of this awareness, and people are realizing now. Like when I was posting these stories on my Instagram page, people would come and say, now that I've heard these stories of other people and what they went through and how it has affected them as adults now I realize I had similar experiences, and now I'm seeing that could have affected me. I'm acknowledging my own pain.
Tell me about your own relationship with fear. I should note that you're in California right now. People are hearing that you're in Los Angeles, but you have been in Iran, as you say, for the last 10 years. In fact, you grew up mostly in New Zealand, and you decided to move back to Iran. Um, and as it turns out that circumstantially you happen to be in the United States when all of this happened. You have been speaking out. um, you've I guess received some warnings and threats. Tell me how you deal with your own fear as somebody who's quite well known in the online space, speaking out as much as you are.
Mhm, mhm. Good question, because I was actually wanting to address this. So I was out of Iran before all of this happened. Then I had my ticket to go back, and then I was told, they are looking for me. I was threatened, so I thought I'm okay to go back, even if I'm even put in prison and all of that. But the only reason I'm not going back is I think if I do go back and if I am imprisoned, I can't do what I'm doing now. I can't raise that awareness. So, that's one more person lost to the
Right.
regime. So that's
Right.
the only reason. And I want to acknowledge this for those people living in Iran and they think, oh, these people, abroad, they are telling us to make change, but they are in safety and we are putting ourselves under threat. But the truth is, um, we are also placed under a lot of fear. I think for all of us, it's more difficult if something bad happens to your family than if it happens to yourself. So I do have family there. I do have assets there. I do have things that I also are meaningful to me. I've also worked very hard for. I also care about, and I am putting all of that aside for the future of Iran, because that is very meaningful. I'm willing to even, a couple of nights ago, I was just standing in front of the mirror, washing my hands that night before going to bed. And I thought to myself, Tina, how far are you willing to go with this?
Mm.
And I thought, um, as a therapist, I think my path in life has been to help people, to be on their side, to provide that assistance. And I thought to myself, how many people are you going to be able to help to the day you die? Very few. And I am willing to risk everything for the future of my people. And how do I deal with that, with all of that fear, with my family being in danger, with they can do all sorts of things to you. They can have your assets taken away. They can do all of that. How do I deal with it is through the meaning it gives me. So it is so meaningful for me to do this that I'm willing to risk everything, and through hope in the future,
Let me get to the
you
hope.
know.
Let me get to the hope piece. I'll ask you about that before I let you go. But I thank you for everything you just said, because I really identify with it. It really makes sense to me. And honestly, uh, it's something I've been saying. There's two or three times I've had somebody say it, in particular, some non-Iranians sort of go, well, why are you spending this much time on this? And I try to explain them that it's not theoretical, it's actually personal. I have family there. I have a, I have a self-interest in wanting to do whatever I can to try and change things there. And so I hear you. Tell me about how we've been having this conversation about I mean, I have to exploit you as a psychologist at some point in this interview, beyond fear. So we've been talking about this idea of the psychological and emotional implications of this doom scrolling that we all do 24/7, waking up in the middle of the night, checking our Instagram, checking our Twitter, seeing, what's the latest, and waking up to news like today, somebody's been executed, a bunch more people have been rounded up. This is what's happening. Here's a child, and a graphic image of a child that's with wounds all over her body. How do you prescribe us dealing with that in order to escape our own um, succumbing to trauma?
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Jian, I was actually thinking about this myself, and it is also been a lot of pressure for me personally as well. Even though we are psychologists, but we're human, and it is also difficult for us. And what I said to myself, okay, I realize, give yourself some time, some time off during the day, to recover, because we need to go on. This could take a very long time, and we need to survive for that to proceed forward. But another thing I told myself was, I was worried. I'm 24/7 on my phone. I'm always like writing posts only on this subject. All I talk about, I see my friends, I talk to my family, all I talk about is this, what's going on in Iran. And to some point, I was like, you shouldn't do this. This is taking over your life. And then at some point, I said to myself, this should be your life at this point. This you contributing your whole life to this, and so many other people doing it as well, should be in that way, for this to go through, for this to proceed. So I think we should value ourselves for doing this, for putting so much energy into this, and get meaning out of it. I mean, what can drive you forward, I guess, is the meaning you find out of it. When I see all of this, when I hear good news, or when I hear even bad news, it makes me more motivated. I'm like, Tina, you are on the right path. You are doing what you should be doing. And I think we should all tell ourselves this.
How much, Tina, even though you've been there for the last 10 years and you live in Iran, how much, given that you're currently in the diaspora, you're currently in California, how much do you think we, those of us outside of Iran, can play a role or should play a role in instructing or suggesting the people inside Iran what they should be doing? You've seemed to be active, saying get into the streets, or you tell people not to shop or to close their stores. Tell me about navigating that line between wanting to give your opinion, but not being inside Iran right now.
Every single of us, well, most of us have families there. We have things we care about there. And so, having like because each one of us is paying that price, we have every right to promote these things, and it is helping. I mean, we're not doing it to damage anyone. We're not doing it to you know for the bad. We're doing it for the good. And even the people in Iran, like most of them, I think the majority are thankful for this. They send me these they say like Farah Khan, and they tell me to post it for them, and I do it.
Yeah, I've seen that. Do you have friends and family who worry about you and say, "Don't stop posting so much, stop being so outspoken"?
Of course, yeah, yeah, yeah. I do, and I said to them, this is the path I've chosen. And when I explained to them my love for that land, Jian, I've moved away from Iran at I think a very sensitive age. So when I moved away when I was 10, and I had so many good memories. My roots were there, and I always had this love. I just felt that was my home. And when I went back, it was because I wanted to contribute. I thought, with all the knowledge and all the experience I've gained in the Western world, I'm just another person. I'm just another psychologist, and there are many, many like me. But having taken that experience and knowledge back to Iran, I could really contribute, and that's what I did. And and I said to my dad was a little bit worried, and I said to him, I want to be in service. I want to go beyond myself and do something for not just myself, not just for my own, life and well-being, but for my people. And it gives me a lot of meaning. And they've come to respect it. They've come to respect it a lot.
Let me ask you a final question about you. I stopped you when you started talking about hope. I wanted to ask you about optimism. I know I saw one of your posts about this. Where do you feel like we're at, Tina? I mean, we're almost 3 months into this uprising, this revolution. There were national strikes the last 3 days that were impressive in terms of seeing the people power that is the participation rate in Iran around this revolution. At the same time, we're still not seeing millions of people in the streets. Tell me about what you've said is your optimism.
I'm 100% optimistic, Gian. I'm actually planning to go back there for Persian New Year's. I'm that optimistic. I'm like, it's gonna be over by then, and I want to go back to my home. Why am I so optimistic? Because as a psychologist, I can see the growth in the people. And, whoever rules a land, they are chosen by those people. So if the society grows, if the society goes beyond their level of consciousness, or if they evolve, then previous rulers who may have served them in some way are no longer able to lead, right? So I can see that evolution. I can see that growth in our society. So this isn't going to serve them anymore. This isn't going to work for them anymore. So sooner or later, they will have to leave. And I think the international society is also seeing this. So look at the reaction of all these different countries, of all these celebrities, all these politicians towards Iran. So this is not the first protests Iranians are having. In Auburn, I think like 3 years ago, with all the protests, 1,500 people were killed, but people didn't end up talking about it. Politicians weren't supporting it so much. UN didn't do anything about it because I think they couldn't see it going anywhere. Because at the end of the day, I think the Western world, they would think about their own benefits and how it could affect them as well. So if they are not 100% sure about this, they wouldn't have supported it. So I think this is different because we are getting all that international support, and all that international support is showing us that there are people around the world that are believing in this movement, and that is what's going to help it go through, I think.
And by the way, speaking of fear, we were speaking of it from the framework, from the prism of those of us who are supporting the revolution, and the fear being propagated by the regime. But um, the Ayatollahs seem pretty scared themselves. I mean, once you start trying to round up and kill children, you seem like you're pretty threatened, aren't you?
Exactly, exactly. And you see them saying all these different things. One day they're threatening the protesters. The next day they're saying, "Oh, we are so open to hear your voice," and so all of this conflict in their actions is showing desperation, I think.
Tina, it's always good to talk to you. Really appreciate you coming on today. Thanks for the work you're doing, and stay in touch.
Thank you.